On Earth, there are places so extreme that they seem to break every ordinary rule, pushing the limits of life to its most fragile state. These are places where even breathing becomes a survival challenge as temperatures drop to dangerous levels. The currents are powerful enough to sweep away almost anything. Villages hang, suspended among breathless high mountains. Every second of existence here carries hidden, unpredictable dangers. What is strange is that within these harsh environments, life still develops in an astonishing way, adapting almost perfectly to the natural conditions. Join us as we explore the most frightening lands on Earth, places that challenge every human limit. Mentawai Islands, Indonesia. The Mentawai Islands lie off the western coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. This is a place that still preserves many very ancient ways of life, especially on Siberut Island, where dense forests cover the land, rivers and waterways weave through the landscape, and many indigenous communities still live almost separated from the modern world. The Mentawai people live in traditional stilt houses called uma. These houses are built from bamboo, wood, and grass, and inside them hang the skulls of animals they have hunted. Like prehistoric people, they wear their hair long, dress in loincloths, and decorate their heads with flowers and ornaments. Their daily life is closely tied to the forest, rivers, and sea. They hunt, fish, gather medicinal plants, and believe that everything around them has a soul, listening to nature as if listening to a family member. And they believe that if humans live wrongly toward nature, they will have to face serious consequences. A traditional food of the Mentawai people is worms from rotting wood in the forests of Siberut, which locals consider a valuable source of protein, rich and fatty in taste, and often eaten raw or grilled. The most outstanding feature of Mentawai is the Sikarai healers. When treating illness, they do not only use leaves or forest roots, but also perform rituals, songs, and acts of belief to connect humans with the invisible world. Here, teeth sharpening and tattooing are not only for beauty, but also reflect a belief in harmony with the spirits of the forest. The Mentawai believe that the sharper a woman's teeth are, the more beautiful she is, and the man whose wife has sharper teeth holds a higher status in the tribe. Mentawai is not an ordinary travel destination. It is like a land that still preserves the remaining traces of one of humanity's most untamed ways of life. Santa Cruz del Islote, Colombia. In the deep blue Caribbean waters of Colombia, there is a small island so tiny that when seen from above, it almost seems swallowed by rooftops. There are no fields, no large roads, and no wide yards like in ordinary villages. Santa Cruz del Islote is only a tiny piece of land in the middle of the sea, yet it is one of the most densely populated places in the world. Life here depends almost entirely on the sea. Boats are the means of transportation, fish are the source of livelihood, and the surrounding water is both the road and the natural boundary of the village. Fresh water must be brought in from elsewhere. According to stories passed down over time, the first fishermen chose this place because the surrounding waters were rich in fish, had few mosquitoes, and were convenient for resting after long trips. Then house after house was built, family after family stayed, until the small island became a special community in the middle of the ocean. Santa Cruz del Islote is famous not only because it is crowded, but because of the way people have learned to live so close together. In a place where land is scarce to the point of feeling breathless, every rooftop still clings tightly to the island, as if unwilling to leave the sea. The Kayan villages, Myanmar. In the eastern highlands of Myanmar, the Kayan villages are famous for the image of women wearing brass coils around their necks, quietly sitting and weaving cloth inside mountain wooden houses, a sight the world sees once and cannot forget. Some sets of coils weigh more than 24 pounds, pressing the shoulders downward and creating the impression that the neck is longer than normal. Many Kayan girls begin wearing their first coils at around the age of 5. Over time, each brass coil is added one after another, layer after layer, until a thick, heavy spiral of metal forms around the neck and almost becomes part of their body. According to stories within the Kayan community, this neck coil tradition comes from the belief that their ancestors had a special connection with dragons. People believe that Kayan women wear brass coils to imitate the graceful, elongated curve of a dragon's neck, a creature regarded as sacred and protective. What is worth thinking about is that many Kayan villages today have become tourist attractions, where women are often seen as something strange to photograph rather than as real human beings. Behind that traditional beauty, could there be the fate of a small community trying to hold on to its own old customs in order to serve the curious eyes of the outside world? Atule'er village, China. On the sheer cliffs of Sichuan province, there is a village that once made the whole world pause, because the children's road to school here was not on solid ground. It hung suspended among rock, wind, and deep ravines. This is Atule'er village, once known as China's Cliff Village. This village is home to the Yi community, located in a high mountain area that was isolated from the outside world for a long time. Most of the homes here are simple houses scattered along the mountainside, built from familiar mountain materials such as wood, rammed earth, stone, and simple roofing. In the past, to go down the mountain for school, the market, or the hospital, residents had to climb crude rope ladders clinging to a cliff nearly 2,600 feet high almost equal to 3 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other. For children, every trip to class was not just going to school, but like stepping through a life or death challenge. After these images became widely known, the authorities built a stronger system of steel ladders to replace the old ones. The most remarkable thing about Atule'er is not only its height or dangerous cliffs, but the way people once clung to the mountain in order to live. This place is a symbol of humanity's ability to adapt to extreme terrain, showing that determination can turn a giant wall of stone into a long-term home. Ifugao Rice Terrace Villages, Philippines. There are fields that do not lie on flat ground, but were carved straight into the mountainsides by ancient people, layer by layer, tier by tier, like stairways leading up to the sky. In Ifugao, rice fields are not only places for farming, they are like a living heritage, passed from the hands of ancestors to their descendants through many generations. This place is famous for these rice terraces, which spread across about 61,800 acres, winding around the mountainsides, rising to more than 7,900 feet, covering an area comparable to a mid-sized city and climbing like a giant wall of earth. The terrain here is steep and prone to landslides, so each terrace must be held firmly in place by stone and earth walls gripping tightly to the mountainside. Water for the entire system is carried from the forests on the mountaintops through narrow channels flowing from one field to another, like an extremely intelligent irrigation network hanging on the slopes. When the water season arrives, each terrace reflects the sky, like pieces of mirror lying on the mountains. When the rice ripens, the entire mountainside turns a warm, golden color. For the Ifugao people, a grain of rice is not simply food, but the result of respect for the land, water, forest, and ancestors. Even today, UNESCO continues to warn that this area faces strong earthquakes and an increasing risk of damage from repeated storms and floods, yet the people of Ifugao have patiently lived here for thousands of years, older than many modern nations. Ganvié, Benin. Ganvié in Benin is a village where thousands of people chose the water as a place of refuge to escape the dangers that once came from the mainland. This place is often called the Venice of Africa, but behind the unusual beauty of its stilt houses and small boats lies an extremely painful story. According to local history, the ancestors of the Tofinu people built the village on the lake to escape slave raids. At that time, the water was not only a place to live, but also a wall protecting the entire community. The entire foundation of the houses rests on thousands of wooden stakes driven deep into the lake bed, keeping the homes stable over a vast stretch of water. Life in Ganvié takes place almost entirely by boat. People go to the market by boat, visit neighbors by boat, and carry goods, food, and young children to school by boat. For many families, fish are the main source of livelihood. They catch fish, raise fish, and trade products right on the surface of the lake. Ganvié, therefore, is not only a strange floating village in the middle of a lake, but also a place shaped by fear, tears, and the will to survive of people who had no way back. Floating villages on Loktak Lake, India. What makes Loktak Lake in the Indian state of Manipur so strange? Loktak Lake is the largest freshwater lake in northeastern India. Seen from above, its surface is not still and smooth like ordinary lakes, but scattered with strange green patches called fumdi. These are masses of vegetation, mud, and roots bound together, floating like pieces of land that can move. For a long time, people living around the lake have depended on fish, boats, and small huts built on the water. In some areas, large circles are created to raise and catch fish, making the lake look from a distance like a giant maze. What is special is that life here is not based on fixed ground. The fumdi patches can shift position with the water, the wind, and the seasons, sometimes making people's lives unstable and dangerous. They must become used to a life that is always moving, where the road is the lake surface, the vehicle is a boat, and the main source of livelihood is fish. The floating villages on Loktak Lake, therefore, are not only fascinating because of their unusual landscape, they also reveal the enduring resilience of human beings, showing that even on fragile, uncertain ground, life still finds a way to hold on in the middle of the vast water. Kampong Phluk, Cambodia. Kampong Phluk is famous for its very tall stilt houses beside Tonle Sap Lake, the largest freshwater lake in Southeast Asia. Because the alluvial soil is soft and the water level changes sharply by season, this place is not suitable for heavy concrete structures. Therefore, local people build wooden houses raised high on long rows of stilts to adapt to the surrounding environment. The lives of Kampong Phluk's residents are closely tied to the lake, fish, boats, and the surrounding flooded forest. For them, water is not only scenery, but also the road, the source of food, and a daily challenge. The most special feature of Kampong Phluk is the dramatic change between the dry season and the rainy season. In the dry season, the houses stand high on wooden stilts with mud and dry paths underneath. But when the water rises, the entire village turns into a world on water, where boats can pass almost right by the doors of homes. Kampong Phluk, therefore, is not only a strange floating village, it is also a place where people must place their entire lives on fragile wooden stilts, living according to each season of rising and falling water, and quietly enduring the uncertainty of nature to hold on to life and home. Oymyakon, Russia. In the remote Siberian region of Russia, there is a village so cold that boiling water thrown into the air instantly turns into crystal, and children only get the day off from school when the temperature reaches -67 degrees Fahrenheit. That is Oymyakon, the place that holds the terrifying record of -96.2 degrees Fahrenheit, the coldest permanently inhabited place on the planet. Life here is so harsh that vehicles often have to keep their engines running for many hours to avoid breaking down from the cold. Phone batteries can drain very quickly after only a few minutes outdoors. The ground stays frozen all year, making farming almost impossible. Therefore, the people's main foods come from reindeer meat, fish, and traditional preservation methods. The specialty dish stroganina, made from frozen river fish, shaved into paper-thin slices that melt on the tip of the tongue with salt and pepper, is what saved them from scurvy. What makes Oymyakon so fascinating is not only its extreme temperature, but the way people continue to live, work, go to school, and raise families in conditions that many other places could hardly endure. In a place where the cold can choke every movement, this village still exists as proof of the limits of human endurance. When learning about Oymyakon, many people cannot help wondering why humans choose to remain in such a brutally frozen land. Tai O, Hong Kong. In the middle of a Hong Kong filled with skyscrapers, trains, shopping centers, and modern lights, Tai O appears like a remaining piece of the past at the edge of the sea. This is an old fishing village located on the western side of Lantau Island, famous for its wooden stilt houses built over the water, where people have lived with the tides for many generations. Tai O was once home to fishing communities, especially the Tanka people, whose lives were tied to boats, fish, salt, and the sea. The stilt houses here are called pang uki, with posts driven into the tidal flats, connected to one another by small walkways and wooden bridges. When the tide rises, the whole village seems to float on the sea. When the tide recedes, rows of wooden posts are exposed, making Tai O look like an old memory standing in mud and water. What makes Tai O special is not only its stilt house architecture, but also its slow rhythm of life in a city famous for speed. Local people dry seafood, sell shrimp paste, row boats through small waterways, and preserve the flavor of an old Hong Kong. Do you know what has helped the wooden posts planted in the mud of Tai O support an entire community for centuries, while modern residential areas depend on steel and concrete? The island villages of Batanes, Philippines. At the far northern edge of the Philippines, surrounded by seas that are windy all year and often struck by major storms, Batanes appears as a small island group with a strangely tough spirit. The villages of Batanes sit among grassy hills, cliffs, blue seas, and winds that can blow day and night. This place is not noisy like familiar tourist islands, but carries a feeling of distance and isolation, like a land on the edge of the map. The most special feature of the island villages of Batanes is the traditional stone houses of the Ivatan people. The Ivatan have long learned how to live with storms. They build low, sturdy houses that cling close to the ground, as if every roof knows how to bow before the wind so it will not be swept away. The walls are built very thick with stone and lime. The roofs are covered with kogon grass, and the windows are small to reduce the force of the wind. One of the most famous symbols of Batanes is Bajau Lighthouse. It is like a guiding light that helps boats move safely. Here, visitors can climb the tower to admire the beautiful scenery of Bajau town. What makes Batanes so fascinating is the quiet endurance of villages that have survived for generations in the middle of the vast sea. Though small before storms, the Ivatan people still know how to adapt and live with a harsh Mother Nature. Taos Pueblo, United States. Taos Pueblo is an ancient indigenous village in the state of New Mexico, United States, famous for its multi-story buildings made from clay, straw, water, and wood. In the middle of a vast desert plateau, where sun, wind, and time constantly wear everything down, these earth-brown structures still stand firm like a living part of history. What makes Taos Pueblo special is that this place has been continuously inhabited for thousands of years, with traditional rituals still carefully preserved. The traditional architecture here is also very special. The ground floor usually has no entrance, like a modern house, and residents use wooden ladders to climb down from the roof as a way to increase defense during periods of historical conflict. For the Taos Pueblo community, the village is not only a place to live, but also a sacred space connected to the land, water, mountains, and ancestors. The stream flowing through the village is considered an important source of life. In 1992, Taos Pueblo was recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. This place is fascinating and attractive because everyone wants to know how a complex built from materials that seem so fragile could survive for centuries in the middle of such a vast desert plateau. Sapa Mountain Villages, Vietnam. In the mountains of northern Vietnam, Sapa appears through mist, terraced fields, and villages nestled at the foot of the Hoang Linh Son Range. This is not only a famous travel destination with majestic natural scenery, but also a long-standing home to many ethnic minority communities. The special feature of Sapa's mountain villages is a life that clings tightly to the mountainsides. Local people have turned slopes that are difficult to farm into terraced fields, then guided water from mountain streams into each small plot. When the water season arrives, the entire valley reflects the sky like pieces of mirror lying among the mountains. When the rice ripening season comes, each terraced field turns a shining golden color, winding around the mountainsides like giant silk ribbons, creating a scene often compared to stairways to heaven. Life here is also tied to local markets, brocade clothing, the sound of the ken, weaving, the Red Dao people's herbal bathing tradition, and winding mountain roads in the cold mist. On deeply cold days, with a little luck, visitors may even see snow falling beautifully, like in Europe, through the mist, creating a magnificent landscape like an ink wash painting. It is the constant change of nature, climate, and light, blended with the unique cultural identity of the highland communities of northwest Vietnam, that creates a charm powerful enough to captivate the heart. The villages of the Bajau Sea nomads in Malaysia and the Philippines. In the middle of a sea that seems unable to hold even a single roof, the Bajau people can still build an entire community suspended above the water. They stand on wooden posts driven into the shallow seabed instead of on solid land, connected by narrow walkways so fragile that it feels as if a stronger wind or rougher wave could make everything collapse at any moment. From a distance, it looks like a cluster of temporary houses, forgotten in the middle of the ocean. But in reality, this is a way of life that has endured for many centuries. The Bajau people once lived almost entirely on wooden boats, drifting with the seasons, the tides, and the schools of fish. Only later, when they needed a more stable community life, did they gradually build fixed stilt houses above the sea. The Bajau people once lived almost entirely on wooden boats, drifting with the seasons, the tides, and the schools of fish. Only later, when they needed a more stable community life, did they gradually build fixed stilt houses above the sea. But even with a roof over their heads, their lives have never truly escaped danger. Beneath the floor is water. Around them is water. And their livelihood also lies deep beneath that water. Many Bajau divers must dive deeper than 62 feet, about the height of a 6-story building, just to find food and make a living. Children here grow up with paddles and boats, learning how to move across the water even before they learn to read and write, all in order to survive. But the most frightening thing is not only the danger from the sea. Sometimes it is political instability and invisible maritime borders that force entire communities to leave, abandoning behind them a village full of lonely memories in the middle of the open sea. Wae Rebo Mountain Village, Indonesia. Hidden deep among the mist-covered mountains of Flores Island, Indonesia, there is a small, unusual village that makes it hard to believe it still exists in the modern age. It is Wae Rebo, an ancient village located at an elevation of about 3,600 feet, where giant cone-shaped roofs stand quietly among the mountain clouds, like a secret kept hidden for centuries. To reach this place, one cannot simply sit in a vehicle and step out to sightsee. The final stretch requires walking through the forest, climbing over damp slopes, surrounded by the sounds of insects, rustling leaves, and mist so thick that at times the path ahead seems to disappear. The deeper one goes, the stranger the feeling becomes, as if every step is moving away from the familiar world and entering a place outside of time. What makes Wae Rebo unforgettable is its traditional Mbaru houses. Their roofs rise high, covered with palm leaves, with round structures and multiple levels inside, large enough for several generations to live together. Seen from a distance, the entire village looks like 7 giant hats rising out of a valley of clouds, both strange and captivating. Here, there is none of the noise of the city, no glaring lights, no hurried pace of life. There is only kitchen smoke, footsteps on damp earth, and calm faces shaped by a quiet life. Perhaps that is why Wae Rebo, though isolated, silent, and mysterious in a way that is hard to explain, still carries such a mesmerizing charm. The Uro's Floating Islands, Peru. The Uro's Floating Islands are a unique man-made archipelago located on Lake Titicaca, Peru, built entirely from totora reeds by the Uro's people. The Uros cut the reeds, tie them into layers, then stack them on top of one another to create the island base. On those soft reed layers are homes, boats, cooking fires, and the lives of many generations. Because of this, each island looks like a giant raft floating on the surface of the lake. When walking on it, people feel the ground beneath their feet is soft and spongy, sinking slightly like walking on a cotton mattress, while below lies the cold, deep water of Titicaca. What makes these islands special is that they are not completely fixed in place. They can be moved, anchored with wooden stakes, and must be regularly reinforced by adding new layers of reeds when the old layers begin to rot. The Uros people make a living through fishing, hunting water birds, making handicrafts, and welcoming tourists. Although they drift on the surface of the lake, this place still has schools, churches built from reeds, and many families now have electricity thanks to solar panels. Visiting Uros feels like stepping into another world, where people live simply and close to a harsh, natural environment. Ushguli, Georgia. In the cold Caucasus Mountains of Georgia, there is a village so high that winter feels as if it does not simply pass through, but stays there for half the year. That place is Ushguli, an ancient cluster of villages in Upper Svaneti, located at an elevation of about 6,900 feet, near the foot of snow-covered Mount Shkara. What makes Ushguli unusual is not only its elevation, but also the Svan stone towers standing upright in the valley. They are not structures built merely to be admired. For many centuries, they served as homes, fortresses, and shelters whenever danger approached. From a distance, the entire village looks like a cluster of watchtowers forgotten by time among white skies and grey stone. When winter settles in, snow can cover this place for many months, making the road into the village difficult and isolated. At that time, Ushguli no longer feels like a tourist destination, but like an ancient fortress enduring the harsh silence of the high mountains. It is precisely that cold, isolated, and enduring character that makes this place strangely captivating, like a surviving trace of an old world that still refuses to disappear. Tana Toraja village, Indonesia. Among the damp green mountains of Sulawesi Island, Tana Toraja appears like a land where death does not disappear, but remains beside the living. This place is famous for its tongkonan houses, with roofs curving upward like the bow of a boat. But what is even more haunting lies on the steep cliffs, where ancient burial sites quietly look down over the valley. What makes Tana Toraja mysterious is the way the Toraja people face those who have passed away. In many places, funerals take place quickly, but here, the farewell ceremony can be prepared for a very long time, because it is not only a ritual, but also a matter of family honor, ancestral belief, and the connection between two worlds. Some families still keep deceased relatives inside the home until they have enough means to hold a complete ceremony. On cliffs such as Lemo or Londa, dark burial niches sit high above the ground, with wooden Tao figures outside representing the deceased. From a distance, they look like silent eyes watching over the valley, making the entire landscape feel both sacred and chilling. Some tourism sources also note that cave graves, hanging graves, and coffins placed inside cliff walls are distinctive features of this region. Asaro Village, Papua New Guinea. In the eastern highlands of Papua New Guinea, near Goroka, there is a village called Asaro, famous for its mudmen wearing clay masks, their bodies covered in white, moving slowly like ghosts rising from the earth. What makes Asaro haunting is not only its strange appearance, but also the hard-to-explain feeling that comes from watching them move in silence. The clay masks have deep eye sockets, distorted mouths, and exaggerated features that look both bizarre and unsettling. They do not feel like simple costumes, but like the face of some ancient fear that still remains. People say this image was once connected to war, surprise, and the fear of spirits. Although this tradition has now become a cultural symbol, it still preserves a powerful visual weight that gives viewers chills. Kandovan, Iran. The stone village of Kandovan in Iran is a unique cave village, more than 800 years old, famous for its beehive-shaped cone houses carved directly into giant volcanic rock. From a distance, Kandovan looks like a scene out of a fairy tale, but inside is a very practical living system. Each beehive rock formation here is called a Karan, usually with 2 to 4 levels. The lowest level is used to keep livestock. Above that is the kitchen area, followed by the guest room. The highest and narrowest part is often used to store food, helping protect it from moisture. And one interesting fact is that this is one of the most energy-efficient homes on Earth because the volcanic rock keeps the caves warm in winter and cool in summer. But do not think life in Kandovan is very difficult, because the people here have all the conveniences found in any other region of the world, making Kandovan feel both like a living heritage site and a modern community that continues to exist inside the mountain. Besides its unusual architecture, Kandovan also attracts visitors with the village's famous natural mineral spring, where many people come with the hope of helping improve kidney stones. Sagsai, Mongolia. In the remote west of Mongolia, where the Altai Mountains stretch beneath a sky so cold and wide it feels almost unsettling, there is a village region called Sagsai. This is home to the Kazakh community, famous for the tradition of hunting with golden eagles, a custom that makes outsiders both curious and feel as if they are seeing a remaining fragment of ancient times. Sagsai is not the kind of destination one simply stops by for fun. It lies among open steppe, distant mountains, strong winds, and vast empty spaces so immense that people seem as small as dots on the cold ground. Here, nature is not gentle. The wind lashes the face, cuts through clothing, and carries a dry cold as sharp as a thin blade. What makes Sagsai special is the sight of Kazakh people riding horses across the deserted land, with a giant golden eagle perched on their arm. When the first snow of the season begins to cover the Altai Mountains, they enter the hunting season, bringing horses, fur coats, leather straps, and a kind of courage passed down through many generations. That scene does not look like a tourism performance, but like a ritual of survival between earth and sky. The round tents, herds of livestock, thin kitchen smoke, and the shadow of an eagle gliding across the grey sky give Sagsai a cold, mysterious, and hard-to-reach beauty that is also deeply captivating. Phuktal Monastery, India. Phuktal Monastery is one of the most unique and remote Buddhist monasteries, perched on a steep rocky cliff in India's Loktak Valley. From a distance, Phuktal looks like a giant beehive made of mud, wood, and stone. White walls, red roofs, small windows, and narrow paths press into one another, layered around an ancient cave. Below, the turquoise Loktak River flows quietly through the gorge, while all around there are only rocks, wind, and a silence so long that it makes people feel as if time has stopped here. The path to reach this place is also extremely challenging. Legend says that more than 2,000 years ago, this place was only a lonely cave beside the Sarup River. A monk named Tuldan came to live and practice in this very cave. Over thousands of years, many other monks also came here and attained spiritual awakening, escaping the realms of worldly life, no longer suffering physically or mentally. That is why people believe this place helps human beings let go of worldly attachments. What is interesting is that this place provides free education for children in the Loktak Valley. In a place that seems almost impossible to live in, Phuktal still quietly preserves the faith, knowledge, and spirit of the Zanskar people through many generations. Lolochai Village, Vietnam. In a place that almost touches the northernmost point of Vietnam, right beneath the Lung Khu flag tower, there is a small village called Lo Lo Chai. It nestles beside Dragon Mountain, in the Dong Van Karst Plateau, a place that is cold, dry, and hard like the backbone of the earth and sky. What makes Lo Lo Chai intriguing is not any flashy appearance, but the feeling that this place still preserves a very old rhythm of life. The rammed earth houses, yin-yang tiled roofs, stone fences, and small roads covered in mist make the entire village feel like a piece of memory forgotten at the border. The Lolo people here still preserve embroidery, dances, forest worship rituals, celebrations for the new rice harvest, and a way of life closely tied to their ancestors. Entering the village, people do not feel as if they are passing through an ordinary tourist destination, but as if they are stepping into the fragile boundary between the present and the past. Lolo Chai is not noisy, and it does not try to overwhelm anyone. But the longer people look at the yellow earthen houses standing silently in the mountain wind, the more they feel that this place is mysterious in its own way, as if the entire village is quietly guarding the last memory of the karst plateau. Baduy Village, Indonesia. Baduy Village in Indonesia is famous for a community that still maintains a traditional way of life and limits the use of modern technology. While the outside world rushes after smartphones, motorbikes, concrete, and electric lights, the Baduy community still chooses to walk barefoot on dirt roads, wear self-woven cloth, farm by hand, and keep an almost absolute distance from the outside world. To reach the Baduy region, visitors must walk along dirt paths, cross bamboo bridges, follow forested hills, and slow their pace more than usual. The atmosphere here does not feel like a tourist destination. Simple stilt houses, thatched roofs, bamboo walls, and a rhythm of life repeated with the farming seasons make Baduy both peaceful and difficult to access. There is nothing flashy to show off, but it is precisely this rejection of the outside world that creates its strange appeal. Baduy does not try to be special. They simply live quietly as their ancestors lived, leaving the modern world to wonder who is truly the one out of place. Makoko, Nigeria. In the noisy city of Lagos, where large bridges, traffic, and high-rise buildings crowd together almost suffocatingly, Makoko appears like a fragment of life separated from the modern world. This is a settlement along the Lagos Lagoon, where many wooden houses are built on stilts, and the pathways are not paved roads, but narrow waterways. People often call Makoko the Venice of Africa, but Makoko does not have a grand or romantic beauty. Here, the water is the road, the canoe is the essential means of survival, and each stilt house feels like a fragile point of support amid mud, waves, rain, and hardship. Children are used to going to school by boat, adults fish, smoke fish, and trade right on the water. Life is not beside the water, but directly above it, struggling day after day against uncertainty. What makes Makoko intriguing is its chilling contrast. On one side is modern Lagos, growing quickly like a giant machine. On the other side are old corrugated metal roofs, wooden stilts, small canoes, and families who have lived for many generations on unstable water. Makoko is not a place that makes people marvel because of its beauty. It makes people fall silent. Because in the heart of a megacity, there still exists a community living adrift, as if their entire future is also floating on the water. Inlay Floating Village, Myanmar. In the Shan Hills of Myanmar, Inlay Lake appears like a giant mirror of water. But the strangest thing is not the surface of the lake, but the way people build homes, grow vegetables, travel, and live directly on it. The Intha people build wooden and bamboo houses on tall stilts, forming floating villages in the middle of the lake. Here, roads are not dirt roads. The roads are narrow waterways winding between stilt houses, floating gardens, and boat docks. To go to the market, visit a neighbor, or head out to the garden, people step onto a boat the way city people step into a car. The most intriguing thing is the floating gardens. Local people gather algae, mud, and plants from beneath the lake to create vegetable beds, then anchor them with bamboo poles. When the water rises, the gardens rise too. When the water recedes, the gardens lower. It is a way of life that is both intelligent and unbelievably fragile. And the image that has made Inla famous around the world is that of men standing at the bow of a boat, balancing on one leg while wrapping the other leg around the oar to row. This rowing style helps them see over the reeds and floating plants on the lake's surface. Because of this, the whole of Inle Lake carries a very strange sense of mystery, quiet and slow, yet always making people feel as if life itself is swaying uncertainly along with nature. As today's journey comes to a close, we have traveled together through villages where it seems almost impossible for human beings to exist on the map of the world. Hopefully, the images and stories from this journey have not only helped you understand more about distant lands, but also helped us look again at the value of a home, of peace, and of things that may seem very ordinary in everyday life. If this journey felt memorable to you, please leave a comment and let us know which village impressed you the most. And if you would like to continue joining us on future explorations to strange lands, mysterious communities, and places around the world so beautiful they are hard to believe, do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you will not miss the journeys ahead. I hope you enjoyed the images and stories from this journey.